Primetime Seniors is brought to you by Home Helpers of the Lowcountry, providing safe and independent in-home care. And filmed on location at Riverside at Belfair. More than a retirement community, it's a lifestyle. Welcome to Primetime Seniors, living for today, making choices for tomorrow. I'm Debbie Court here at Riverside at Belfair, along with Debbie Morris, owner of Home Helpers of the Lowcountry, and Laura Williams, who's the executive director here at Riverside at Belfair. It's great to be with you both.
It's wonderful to be here.
Before we get started, grandmother-to-be.
I am very excited. I had nothing to do with it, but I take all the congratulations.
Of course you do. You are beaming.
I know. I'm a grandma wannabe for quite a while now, and my brother and I were chatting about it the other day, that we don't know where it came from, except that we see what an extraordinary relationship our parents have with their grandchildren, and we look forward to that.
Well,
so,
that's awesome news, so congratulations on that. I'm sure
Congratulations.
we'll keep the viewers updated in future episodes as to all of the good things that are going on. But in this episode, let's talk a little bit about July. When we did the July episode, we talked about wellness and the role that wellness plays in independent living. Well, for August, we want to expand that and really just focus on independent living and what you need to do to make that happen. Let's talk about our topic for August.
And really what it is. Because Laura is the executive director of a facility that is independent living. I'm owning a company that works with people in facilities but also in their homes, because that's how they define it. So it's a curious discussion about what defines independence.
Well, you were talking about this too when we were talking about the topic and where we were going with it. And I Googled the definition. It sounds ridiculous, but I thought, wait a minute, let me just get back to the basics here. Independence, free from outside control, not depending on another's authority, which I think I was thinking in terms of I'm doing it all by myself.
Oh, yeah. And Laura and I have talked about that. There's a big difference between being independent and being totally self-reliant. I see independence as being the decision maker, directing your own life, whether it's what are you going to have for lunch to who's going to handle your finances when you're not able to.
Being independent of the authority piece of it is, I think, the key right there. You're making the decisions, even if you live in a community like Riverside at Belfair, which is independent living, even saying in assisted living, if you're still making those decisions and you want and need services from others to help you, that's what independent living is all about.
Yeah, I was talking to someone about it last week, and he said, so what you're saying to me is independence is a state of mind. And I said, well, it's a state of self, of how you see yourself. And I think it can be anywhere.
And it's not something that necessarily just happens. There's some thought and planning that has to go into it.
Absolutely. You see that every day.
Absolutely. It's, it takes families, and when there's not families, there needs to be some type of surrogate family, professionals, elder care attorneys, care managers, everything.
And these are I don't want to say they're tough topics, but
they are tough topics.
I guess they are. They're not
like
light and frilly topics.
None of us want to be not independent. We work hard all our lives to have options and to be independent.
We want to hold on there.
Absolutely.
And coming to those decisions and knowing, yes, it's time to make those decisions, that's hard for a lot of people, and it's even harder for the families.
Well, again, this show is really a platform for talking about those topics and putting it out there. And I think even just in our preliminary conversations and when we're planning and bringing on guests and such, it really makes you stop and think. In my terms, I'm thinking about my mom and my stepdad or my mother-in-law, father-in-law, that type of thing. Like, where are they in this process? So you really have to be...
Well, and Laura and I have talked about that it's not just elderly, it's also disabled. It's even as we're raising our children, we want them to have the skills to be independent at each level that they're capable of. You want the most of that. And we teach people very young the value of independence. So it's an important topic, absolutely. And I think for us here on the show especially, and we'll see that in today's and in all through August, the shows, it's about knowing what your resources are so you make the best decisions that you can. That seems to be really key.
And that's what's great too about having you both on as part of our show on a consistent basis. I mean, each month you're both here. You are both experts in senior issues, senior care, senior wellness. You each have your own individual businesses, but you are a huge resource for folks. And we want to make sure that you all
Absolutely.
know that even if it's not direct to the business that you have, that you are here as a wealth of knowledge and a resource for people to tap into.
Yeah, and I think both Laura and I feel that people should feel very comfortable to call either of us.
Absolutely. And you know, it's interesting because I think anybody, especially, you know, like you and I, we've talked about it, this all came about for me 20 years ago for my career because of my own family situation with my mother's mother, my grandmother. So it's decisions in your own family that lead you into these type of paths. And I want to be that resource for people. They should not have to go through what my family went through with Alzheimer's and dementia and the decisions my family had to go through. So,
and we don't know all the answers. We're
but you'll find
but
them.
we're willing to dig. We'll dig deep.
That's what's nice. You know, if you don't know, then you make a call. It's really interesting to see it. And again, I'm learning so much. The fact that you all can tap into those area resources like our guests coming up in this episode. We've got some great guests coming up.
And that's the takeaway from this month's shows is find out what your resources are, understand what your options are, and move forward with planning and being organized.
Well, this is a lot of good stuff coming up. We're going to take a quick break here on Primetime Seniors, but stay there. We will be right back with lots more. Welcome back to Primetime Seniors. We are joined now by Ann Kelly Russell, an elder law attorney with McNair Law Firm. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
We are talking this month about independent living, and I'm being hit with a lot of new terminology, one of which was elder law. That is a new term for me. Can you help us understand what you do?
Well, I'm an elder law and estate planning attorney, and what we do is prepare living documents and documents to help you prepare for your plan at death, at both incapacity and death. That's primarily what we do.
Not a light, fun topic.
Not a light topic.
but again, very important, and that's why, you know, we need to understand some of these things and what needs to be done and when. When it's a good time to
Laura,
take a look at these things.
You were saying earlier how very important these documents are when people are making decisions about where to live.
Absolutely. You know, what ends up happening is I see a lot in Belfair Gardens, which is assisted living for Alzheimer's and dementia care. We have families that come in and they're, you know, looking for help and placement for a loved one, and they've never gone through the process. They don't have power of attorney. They don't have, you know, the paperwork in place that they need. And it's a little scary, to be honest with you. These are necessities.
What happens then?
Well, they have to go through the process, and unfortunately at that point, what happens a lot of times is the person has to be declared incompetent through the courts, which frankly, it can be a little traumatic.
Sad thing.
It is very
That's a sad process.
The process is very sad. It involves the person. It's not like you can do it without the person's knowledge. It's a little devastating, to be honest with you. So if you have everything, your ducks in a row ahead of time, and you've got a good attorney and you can walk through the process with them, so much better, so much less stress in the long run.
And I think what she means by ducks in a row is to have your durable power of attorney. That's a financial power of attorney, someone who you appoint to give you to make decisions, financial decisions for you if you're unable to, as well as a healthcare power of attorney who's going to place you in Belfair Gardens, who's going to make that decision for you. If you don't make that decision for yourself, it could be some long-lost relative that you haven't seen in 20 years who doesn't really want to be making these decisions for you and places you in a home where you shouldn't be living.
And nobody thinks they're going to have to make these decisions. Nobody wants to have to make these decisions. Unfortunately, nobody plans on having, an incapacitation of any, degree. So we have to plan ahead.
And it doesn't even have to be a cognitive impairment. You can be in an accident and be hospitalized, and without these kind of documents, your spouse or your children don't have the legal authority to make your medical decisions.
That's true.
So
even people my age, I strongly recommend
Absolutely.
To all of you just to get those documents in place, and then you don't have to touch them for 10 years.
That's right.
Does it have to be a family member? Or I guess
It doesn't. It doesn't. It can be whomever you trust. We have clients that come in who don't have a lot of family in the area, but have a very close friend who's younger and who is competent, that they trust, and they want to go over with this friend, what are my goals? Where do I want to live if I get Alzheimer's? They may say, that's my biggest fear. I want to ensure that if I get Alzheimer's, this person knows what I want to have happen.
Yeah, and you're under no obligation who to pick. We have
No.
at Home Helpers, we have a client who has 3 children. 2 of them live in the area, 1 doesn't, but her power of attorney is a niece that she particularly has confidence in and who she feels is emotionally detached enough that it wouldn't become a difficult situation between her children. You know, so it can be a lot of different options for that. I have a question because when you said, you know, I'm an elder law attorney and an estate planning attorney, can you talk about estates? I don't want people to think that that this is wealth management. This is
I
not,
think when you hear the word estate planning, you think
you have to.
That's a really good point. And when we talk about estate planning, everybody has an estate. It could be $1,000 in your checking account, or it could be $3 million. But you want that money, whatever you have, even if it's just the things in your house, your treasures.
Yeah.
You want those to go to the people that you want them to go to. Otherwise, state law controls where they go.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that the state gets it. I think that sometimes is confusing.
they then become the decision maker.
They become the law becomes the decision maker. You don't. You're no longer around, but you do want. Most people want their stuff to go where they want it to go.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier of directing your own life. And
having the authority,
Yes.
making your decisions.
have the
important.
authority yourself and make the decisions of what you want to happen with what you've accumulated, with your own body, with your own life. It's all about making your own decisions.
I would think you wouldn't want to just give that up to anybody, you know?
But,
especially
you know,
if you've got kids and grandkids.
Yes.
And
if you
That's when
came
it
in my
becomes
house and
important.
my estate, things that mean so much to me, they would mean nothing to some other people.
Right.
But for somebody who knows me really well and the things that I would want them to have,
Absolutely.
sometimes it is about the stuff. Sometimes it's about
Yes.
those little treasures that are so important to us. Those are decisions we should make on our own.
we're getting ready to wrap up, but what are some of the other documents that people can that they need to
think
get
about
together?
are, a last will and testament is somewhat of an estate plan. The durable power of attorney, the health care power of attorney, the living will. These are all things that you should see an attorney about. Make sure, if you have them, that they work in South Carolina, that they're not dated, that they're not stale.
That's a good point.
It's just always a good idea to pull them out. If you have them, pull them out. Make sure they're good. If you don't have them, now is as good a time as any to get them.
And that's
Get
great.
them done.
You're a valuable resource for the community.
I hope so.
And you have 2 locations, Bluffton and Hilton Head,
Yes.
which is great.
Yes.
So, Ann Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break here on Primetime Seniors, but stay right there. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Primetime Seniors. We are identifying local resources that are available to help folks maintain their independence here in the Lowcountry. We are joined by Karin Lindstrom. She is the community liaison with Tidewater Hospice. It's nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. You know, a lot of times people would question how would hospice have anything to do with independence and living independently. But what I found in assisted living and Alzheimer's and dementia care, and even an independent living community like Riverside of Belfair, is that the support that you give the families lets that caregiver remain independent even though they're going through such a traumatic process through, if it's Alzheimer's or dementia or a terminal illness of any age group. It's, not just pertain to seniors, but that support that hospice gives.
Absolutely. I think that people believe that hospice is just the end of life, but it's truly quality of life. And so quality of life is independence, and that's so important. And the types of groups that we provide, the caregiver support groups, dementia support groups, bereavement groups, all of these groups that are out in the community, not only provided by Tidewater Hospice, but by the community themselves, gives that support back to the families, because hospice encompasses the family as a whole. It's the friends, it's the pets, it's the grandchildren, it's the patient. So it's everybody that's involved, and I don't think everybody thinks about that, and that leads to independence because you're including everybody that's a part of that family house.
It's interesting because so many times when you're going through any type of traumatic, anything, you feel like you're the only person out there going through it. And what happens with the support from hospice, and you can, get them in the right direction and give them the resources they can use, is they learn and they understand that they're not alone in the process at all.
Yeah, and I think it's important, and Karen, talk about this just a little bit maybe. I think what you said earlier is true. I think people think that if they're calling on hospice that they're dealing with imminent death, and it's not that way.
No, it's not. And oftentimes people graduate from hospice. It's called a revocation. And that is because they have gotten to a point where they are independent and they don't have the needs for hospice based on their diagnosis. And so maybe we've gone in there and we have found that, for instance, somebody might be over in your facility and they learned that we can see that just the basis of giving them a milkshake might be a nutritional value. Sometimes we just get into the home and our social worker finds the family dynamic and we can get that person to be more independent, and based on that quality of life, it's giving them an extension of life. If you think about it, when we're down in the dumps just in general, those bad days, they don't give us good health, they don't give us good quality. And those days when you're uplifted and we find things that make us happy and feel better about ourselves, those have an extension. I always tell my mom one thing that gives her the quality of life that she has is the fact that she's very, very active and she does the things that she really enjoys. And just even having my dogs next to her, she enjoys just going out and walking them. So you find that any environment, their home is anywhere that they live. An assisted living, it could be an independent living, a skilled nursing facility, it's their home environment. So what you're saying about hospice, it is a quality of life. It has nothing to do just with the existence of a death that's
imminent. And it goes back to what we said earlier in the show, where independence is almost a state of mind and state of life. So if you've made decisions once again, then you've exerted your independence and exercised that. And I like what you were saying too, and it goes back to what Karen was just saying, that the caregiver health creates a very different atmosphere and climate in any facility, any home, any location. When you're stressed out taking care of somebody, you're not feeling independent, you're not feeling authoritative anymore, you're feeling exhausted.
And you give so much of yourself as a caregiver, they start to neglect their own health. And then what happens is that they actually become the one that needs the care.
And we have all seen that.
And it's heartbreaking.
Are they sometimes the forgotten
Absolutely.
the forgotten person or the element in the whole dynamic?
Heroes, I think is the best way to put it.
Well, and that person caring for somebody else, unfortunately, they don't get to do the resources because they find that they can't get out of the home in order to do it, or there's a guilt. So they find that they need to be there, and every minute they're not with mom or dad or their spouse, that they feel guilt because they're not there with that person. So a lot of these support groups that are free in the community, people don't realize they have a respite. So that that person can come during that caregiver support group and bring the one that they're caring for, if they're transportable, and be able to go and get the care that they need and have the discussions they need and be with the people that are going through the same thing.
They need to recharge their batteries. Probably
almost
on a daily basis.
It's shocking what an hour just talking with people who understand and who get it. It's huge. 1 hour, just 1 hour is huge. It really is.
Yeah, and I think that that level of support goes both ways. And hospices, and I know Tidewater, you have a social worker. Most hospices also have a chaplain and others. So it's looking at the whole picture. It's spiritual needs, social needs, as well as medical. And that, again, goes back to what we've been talking about, those 7 elements of wellness and taking care of all parts of ourselves. So hospices there are a lot of them in the community.
There are a lot of them in the community, and you know, it's everybody has the opportunity to definitely interview and see who you bond with. It goes with any type of caregiver that you're going to have, because we become a part of that family. And so just as you come into an assisted living or an independent living or into any skilled facilities, you know, you can always interview. You interview your doctors, you interview the community, you find what fits for you. And
Assert your independence.
Well, exactly. And I
You don't
think
have to be told what to do.
That's
It's
right.
your
And I-
decision.
I think Laura and I deal with that all the time. People will go and look at different facilities. People will go and look at different home care agencies. And every situation has its own personality. And some mix and some don't. And you need the mix.
Wow. Well, we've learned so much in today's episode of Primetime Seniors. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us there at home. We've got another great episode coming up at the end of this month, and we'll be continuing this conversation about independent living. Again, coming to you from Riverside at Belfair, we thank you for watching Primetime Seniors, and we'll see you next time.